for being here. Thank you very much for sharing the time this hour with us, with the community. Uh, Welcome to this informal conversation.
Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate the invite. I was really intrigued with what I saw and heard, a couple weeks ago. So I was grateful to connect with you and also be here to share. So thank you for the invite.
Thank you very much, Dori. Just for the audience to have some context, Dori is a project manager, program manager for, I don't know, 20 plus years. He has worked in
Mhm.
different areas, different projects, different sizes. So, Dori, can you please briefly share some of, or share your experience with us? A little bit of your experience.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 20 plus years is definitely modest. I've been saying 20 plus years for probably too long. So, um, I'm at the age where I don't want to do the math anymore. I'm much better at subtraction. But no, I appreciate being here. Yeah, I've been a technical program manager, project manager for a while. I actually started as a techie. So, I was more in tech support, network administration back in the day. And if I want to date myself, back in the day, Microsoft was not the leading network operating system. It was Novell.
Oh,
And so, yes, so I originally was a CNA, which stands for Certified Novell Administrator, which is basically a network administrator. But nowadays, if I say that, people think I'm a nurse. so, so I've been in the tech space for a long time and have had the opportunity to figure out that as I've moved through technical support and different things, what I loved is the combination of technology optimization and people. And that's what kind of got me into project and program management. I was doing it before I officially had the role, and then started as a project coordinator and got my PMP and never looked back, and led me to be curious about my project management and program management leadership ability, my interests. So I deliberately moved around, did different things, tried different verticals, different professional services, business side, public entities, healthcare, private entities. I know what I don't like implementing, and I know what I'm good at. And it allowed me to get some breadth and depth to my experience. And along the way, been able to mentor PMs and elevate in my career and grow, and had the opportunity to learn quite a few things through
oh,
experience and battle scars, hard knocks, all those different things.
yes.
Those all turn into learning experiences. So I'm here today to share how I've kind of put all that together to try to give back and help others as I notice a pattern of what is taking place, and has been taking place in our industry.
Oh, that's really, really interesting, Dory, because one of the words that we're going to talk about today is shift. And definitely coming from tech support to
Yep.
program management, I would say this is a huge shift. It may take some years, a couple of decades perhaps,
Yep.
but why don't you talk about a little bit about what was the motivation to go moving forward, not staying on the tech side of things, but moving forward to project coordination, project management, program management, and then talk about leadership. So what can you talk about that process?
Yeah. So I'm a very curious person by nature. And I'm curious about things I don't know, but I'm also curious about my own abilities. And so I was always curious what I could do and pushing myself. Some people compete with other people, I compete with myself,
Well, great.
and want to see what can I do and how can I do things better. So that kind of drove me to see, hey, can I do it in this space, and what it would be like in this space. And that drove me to take another step, another step, another step, and things just kind of evolved. When I realized that I had an aptitude and an interest in the tech space, I was able to then leverage that and try to keep moving. My father was a big motivator because he was a person who went after bigger opportunities, and he was doing things at a time where you didn't maybe even see a lot of men of color, Black men in executive leadership and things along
Hmm.
those lines. And so I had a role model and I saw him doing it. And so I said, I'll do it. And so that's kind of what drove me and what drives me to keep reiterating myself and reinventing myself and seeing what I can do differently. And as I progressed, and even in doing that, a lot of the promotions I've received, and even my first leadership role as a director of a project management team, I wasn't seeking that. Didn't
Oh,
ask for it,
you weren't seeking.
didn't see
Oh,
it coming. No. I went from being a contract PM to senior PM to director of project management in about 3 years. And it was offered to me. I had no idea that's what they were thinking. It was a small startup. And so that led me to these things. And, as I started mentoring PMs and working with PMs, I started noticing patterns, because pattern recognition is one of the superpowers of project and program
pattern
managers.
recognition.
Pattern
Okay.
recognition.
So definitely you're not one of these. Yeah, you're not the try to keep yourself under comfort zone. I mean,
No,
definitely you don't like the comfort zone.
nope. No,
Okay.
I mean, I think I would like it. I mean, it's obviously comfortable settling in, but then I get a little curious about what else I can do
Curious.
and take the steps. That's the difference, is wanting to actually try and figure out, fail fast, and see what works, because a lot of the things I've learned have been because I've taken the risk or just made the mistake, and learned from it. So definitely not a comfort zone kind of person, not anymore.
Not a comfort zone kind of person. Yeah, definitely.
Nope.
Right now, can you talk a little bit about some sort of bad experiences, frictions when you were growing as a person, as a professional, when you were facing these new challenges? What kind of frictions did you face? And this is something that perhaps we can take a couple of lessons to the audience, for the audience that are listening to us right now.
Yeah, so a lot of friction for me, or some friction, some experiences came when what I thought I was going to do as a PM, run the plan, manage the plan, check out the deliverables, create the status reports, report the status, keep the team aligned, wasn't what I ended up having to do, or wasn't really the big part of what my role was. And so, I was working here in the Bay Area for a large company, global SaaS company. And I was relatively new, like maybe 3 months in, 3 or 4 months in, had run some initiatives and was asked by a VP, hey, can you just manage this integration between our two products, short and sweet?
Oh,
Was not
yes.
short, and it certainly was not sweet, not by my definition of sweet. And to this day, when you put those two words together, I kind of get a little agitated. But it turns out that integration did not exist.
What do you mean?
Had
What do you mean?
never
I mean,
existed.
what do you mean?
Vaporware.
Two information systems that had no way to be connected, so to speak.
No, we hadn't done it before. So we sold something we hadn't yet done. That never happens, right? And we sold functionality that didn't yet exist.
Oh man.
Uh, yeah, so we sold vaporware. And so in that particular organization, they were very heavily resource managed, right? So, the technical and the project management resources did not get assigned until the workflow, the paperwork, and all those things happened. Those triggered the assignments of resources. So, it's not like we could even step in. It was something we weren't even aware that we were part of until we were officially assigned to the project.
Mm-hmm.
But turns out sales engineering was being creative during that time. And they were holding status meetings, project meetings for weeks
Without you, without project management,
without
without him.
anyone giving the client the impression things had already started and were moving along.
Oh man.
So I joined what I think is kind of a pre-kickoff call. And this is back in a day where we're not doing video. It's just that triangular thing that was in front of everybody in everybody's conference room.
Ah, yes.
And yeah, my headphones, and here's what they say to me. I'm in the middle of introducing myself. First 10 minutes of the meeting. And I'm interrupted to say, first of all, we need to know what the status is of all these deliverables that are behind, Dori.
10
And on
minutes.
top of that, yeah, and 10 minutes in. And on top of that, he says, we're not confident that what you sold us is a fit for our needs.
Come on, man. I mean, you were in the middle. We were catching bullets. I mean, yeah, you were or catching or avoiding bullets.
I was
Yeah, man.
right in the line of fire. And so in that moment, what mattered was me, not the plan, not the deliverables, not the roadmap, not the contract, not me. What I said next is all that mattered. The judgment that I used, the discernment that I used. And what I said was, as it stands right now, I can't tell you for sure that what we sold you fits your needs. However, if you give me 24 hours to escalate this and pull together the right people, we'll come back together and figure out what the next steps are. And that's all I could think of in a moment. That's all I could think of in a moment. But it turns out that what I then did was I had worked on an initiative with an incredible developer, and I kind of begged him to help. And through working with him, we pulled together after a lot of finger pointing of different IT teams, third
Mm-hmm.
parties, and figuring it out. At the end of the day, we were able to build a solution
But
for the
what?
customer.
Yeah, but I mean, you have this kind of blueprint, this kind of some sort of, architecture solution.
We had to
You
create
know,
it.
yeah.
We
But
had
at
to
the end,
create it.
he was. I mean, you were working with, let's say, a tech lead, a very talented tech lead, and he was able to help you to to fulfill that request from the client.
Hmm.
But definitely not every one of us, not every PM has
Yes.
the luxury of having a good tech lead. So you were caught in the battlefield at the
Hmm.
beginning, and you were in the middle of the crossfire, and then you decided to take a moment, take 24 hours, do something. What happened next?
So it was because I had worked with this developer before, the relationship, that I was
Hmm.
able to get him to help me. Because again, technically he wasn't assigned to this, right?
Hmm.
Because very heavily resourced. There was someone else assigned. And so I escalated. By the time that program was over, every VP knew me because, I escalated it. I laid out the risk because I thought it was actually an exposure risk, right? I also ended up recommending, concessions and things along the lines. We were able to manage to pull together the right technical teams, including third parties, to actually get the integration built. And that took some time because it was a lot of back and forth. A lot of people didn't want to own it. We finally got the owners of the two applications within our product to finally work together to get the solution. But it took escalating quite high to get
Hmm.
that agreement. So that was a big key was escalating and really making that business case and understanding the risk, the real risk, not to the
Hmm.
program, but to the organization if this isn't handled correctly, because it was a misstep in terms of how we sold our product. And not only were we able to pull that off, but they, it was funny because they were very grateful. We were able to create that integration. This is a large company here in the Bay Area, and after we kind of we rolled off because at a certain point, once we rolled it off and we turned it over to the support team, and it took us about I want to say 6 or 7 months to get this integration, which was still a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, sure.
But what ended up happening was I was at my desk and on another call, and I see these people in my periphery, and they actually came in person to thank me.
Great work.
Because
Oh.
and it was the relationship at the end of the day. What saved me were two things: my judgment in the moment and the authenticity that they could hear in my response, but also the relationships that I had already built and that I took very good care of with them. They trusted me, and I kept asking for a little more trust and then delivering on what I asked for. And after doing that a couple of times, they relaxed and trusted that we were going to solve this problem for them. So it took, kind of iterative moments of trust and honesty and judgment and relationship building to get us there.
Oh, and these kind of things you don't learn from the book, definitely.
Yeah.
There's no book that can teach you how to, shift your train of thought, your approach,
Yeah.
yeah, to the way you build trust with the main stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
So, if very, very briefly, besides these skills that you had to improve, what did you learn particularly that you can share with the audience? So if some PM, let's say experienced senior or just junior starting their PM path, what what can you tell us, what can you tell them in terms of when they have to face, let's say, Definitely, any PM will face this
Yes,
kind of situations. This is a must. This is not a matter of when. This is not a matter of if they're going to face it or not. This is a matter of when they're going to face this.
right.
So, uh, teach us, Dory. What's the first thing that you learn from them that you can share with us?
One thing is don't be afraid of escalation. When we are project and program managers, we tend to take it very personally and that we are supposed to project that everything is okay, everything is going well, and keep things under control. Even when things are starting to turn from green to yellow or certain things are happening, we sometimes wait too long to escalate. Escalation creates clarity. Escalation
Mm-hmm.
forces clarity. Just like I tell people who conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict leads to resolution. Resolution is data which can turn into wisdom for your next project or program. So, an escalation is not necessarily a bad thing. It gets attention where it needs to be, and it
Mm-hmm.
signals to leadership you see a risk, you see something that's of risk, and you're raising it. And that's an important thing to do early and not to be afraid to do it. Again, I had to escalate several layers up. I was new,
Mm-hmm.
and that wasn't the way I thought I would be introducing myself to some higher level executives in that organization. But you better want to be on that side of being the one that said, I raised the risk so we could address it, versus, well, I kind of saw it, thought maybe it would work itself out, but that was 6 months ago.
No.
So escalating quickly and not being
Mm-hmm.
afraid of an escalation or having an escalation process, even if it's, high level as to what you need to do when something like this occurs. And know that, you know, you can recover from an escalation that maybe wasn't as uh, severe as you thought. But recovering from not raising a risk when you
Yes.
should have, you won't recover from.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the way that a PM, a senior PM, thinks. Definitely. I mean, if you see something and you don't inform the stakeholders, the sponsor, the client, or whoever needs to be informed, this is huge mistake. So, guys, inform early. I would say it doesn't matter if you're thinking that this is way too small, but definitely a way uh, to manage risks is to inform and to keep everyone involved informed. Well, not everyone, but the pertaining the mainly stakeholder who needs to be informed. And that process of escalating not to your boss but to your boss's boss, the manager, how far did it went? I mean, how far did it go?
It went to several levels of VPs. So there's, we were in an org, we had our own VP, and then each other org that we had to team we had to engage with had VPs. So there's about 4 levels of VPs of where it had to go because I ended up recommending concessions. And I said, we need to give some money back. so,
That's nice to hear. That's something that
so
their CEO would like to hear, right? We need to get
the
some money back.
customers, yes, but
Yeah.
but because I was recommending that because I actually saw an exposure risk, I saw a legal risk, um, because of the way that things were going, and so that's what I mean by the several layers of VPs. There was the technical folks, right? There was the folks over my organization, yes, but then there also was a legal escalation that I had to take. And so again, wasn't trying to get on their radar quite so soon and in that way, but I said, I feel like we need to, in this case, recommend concessions because we did. I felt that was justified. So it went up. VP level was as high as it went, but it was how many VPs in which organizations had to get involved for us to agree and come to agreement as how we're going to resolve it.
Yeah, great teaching. First, well, for me, I would say escalate early, escalate if you need to a lawyer. I mean, I had this conversation with this friend of mine, this lawyer friend of mine, and definitely there are a really huge gap between lawyers and project managers because
Okay.
the I don't know the intersection between lawyers and project managers is the contract. And at the end of if project goes sideways, this is something really usual. We all go back to the contract, to read the contract.
Yeah.
What did we agree? And
Yeah.
on that particular intersection, the contract is where we all have to agree. And getting some concessions is it's just great. I mean, it's great.
Yeah,
Um,
it was warranted, and you know, it was a risky move, but it paid off.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Dori, you created this model, this leadership shift model based
Mhm.
on four pillars. Perhaps we have talked a little bit about one of two of these pillars, but can you talk about a little bit about this? How, why four pillars? So go ahead. Perhaps there are more. Perhaps there are less.
Well, you know, yeah, there probably could be, and there really could be. But when I kind of assessed and looked at my career, and I mentor a lot of PMs. Every time I've moved on, and I still mentor PMs, and I noticed a pattern. There's that pattern recognition, right? Um,
Hmm.
I noticed a pattern in where the challenges seem to be, and even with myself, when I looked back at my career and those challenges and the other battle scars that I had, and I realized, and I thought about what actually made me good at what I do
Hmm.
and how can I categorize that. So when writing stuff, brainstorming, and I realized that they fell naturally kind of into four areas. One is clarity, and by clarity, when I talk about clarity, clarity is like pattern recognition under pressure, right? It's being able to see the pattern, being able to recognize it under pressure, because when are we ever not under pressure as PMs? It's just we're
That's
always
a
under
natural
pressure.
thing. Yeah.
But that's that leading through the ambiguity, right? Because we may not have the clarity, we are to bring the clarity,
Yes.
right? So leading under ambiguity, knowing it's always going to be ambiguous to one degree or another, and then making sure that you're prioritizing, helping your organization to prioritize, helping your team to prioritize. That is still not a skill that is used very well. It's really in the reprioritization. Everyone can prioritize in the beginning, but as things start to move, how do you reprioritize? And then thinking about confidence. And I don't mean performing in confidence.
Hmm.
I mean, that leading without authority, right? Being able to say the risk out loud, and being able to raise that risk. And when you think about like executive presence or strategic leadership, we hear that a lot, but we don't know what that means. And that's what that shift is. Like, how do you shift to a strategic leadership mindset? And then communication. And I don't just mean like, I think some PMs get information sharing confused with communication.
Yes.
Um, and so, like, you're translating delivery into business language, to business impacts, right? It's not just talking about the deliverables. I worked for an organization where they went through a big leadership change. Technically, we were business, an IT shop, and we had a new leader come in. We had been so used to giving the technical updates, right? And she's trying to elevate it to a executive level status reporting, you know. And the team had the hardest time translating what they were doing into executive language business outcomes. They just weren't. They wanted to say, well, I am giving you the update.
Hmm.
The API integration is working. We've got, two more sprints left in this cycle. We have most of the stories we had, but they struggled to, even the PMs, even though they're technical PMs, to make that shift to, what does this mean for the executive? So what? So what? So being able to answer the so what from an executive business impact, that's where the communication kind of lies, framing those risks strategically, and then capability. And I don't mean your degrees, your certifications, all the different trainings that you took. I mean, like, really operating beyond execution. So we should be strategic partners, the strategic thought partners for
Hmm.
our organizations, right? That's a capability, not just managing a project plan, not being proficient at, Smartsheet or Jira. Those things are part of the day to day, but the capability that leads into strategic leadership, really centers around your cross functional influence, your ability to influence the teams, keep them grounded, you know, And so those are the four areas: the capability, communication, confidence, and clarity. I just found were where those really strengths lie in shifting
Mm-hmm.
from just focusing on execution to strategic leadership, because that's the difference in the visibility. Right now, there's a lot of shift. There's shifts in what PMOs are focusing on. AI has now entered the chat, and is just dominating the conversation. And leaders are looking at things differently, not just from a PMO and execution perspective, from a talent perspective. They are actively looking for those capabilities in the talent, not just did you manage a $10 million project from inception to close on budget, on time. That's not the question anymore. So that was the driver behind, and that's how I got there. I just kind of analyzed and I listened, and I just noticed this pattern. I had PMs telling me, but I'm doing everything right.
Mm.
On the last program, it went just fine. It went, and now nothing's, makes sense. These two directors don't agree on the direction. The developer says my timeline is a pipe
Unrealistic.
dream, you
Yeah.
know. So they feel like all of a sudden something shifted when it really had been shifting, but it's like same role, different expectations.
Different context, different country, different
Yep.
governmental policies, different scenarios. So
Yep.
definitely,
Everything.
uh, this is something. 2 weeks ago, I had this conversation with Daniel, and we were talking about that. We're having this analogy between being a project manager and being a father. You may read all the books in the world about parenthood, right? So your first kid arrives. So
Mm-hmm.
all the knowledge that you have from theory is it kind of reduces to I don't know 5%, and then it comes away. It comes this skill, that's something that you said. It's adaptability. It's the way you face things, and then you think you're doing a good thing with your first kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second kid comes, and you have to shift all over again, learn new things.
Yep.
You think that you've done everything, that you know everything, and this is pretty much the same that happens with project management. I mean,
Yeah.
as someone of your peers told you, I during the last project I did everything well. I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same right now, but right now things are going sideways. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So that shift is something that we really need to be aware of. And
Mm-hmm.
on a personal level, we were talking before this conversation, uh, before the streaming. We were talking about certain situations that we here in Colombia and our Latin American countries, we're facing some, setbacks when we're doing certain kind of contracts, or when we're working on certain projects. Because let's face it, it's true. We have people who wants to take a bigger slice of the pie
Yeah.
during certain projects, and this is something that happens every single day in Latin American countries and other countries as well. But here in Colombia and different, in similar regions, we have this situation, and we at a personal level, I had these conversations under the table, very difficult conversations that really can harm clarity, can harm communication.
Mm-hmm.
So under your experience, Dori, can you talk a little bit about if this kind of things happen to you? If you have any context on this front?
I don't think I've had it to that extreme, that you mentioned. I've had to deal with hidden agendas with folks that on the client side where that impacted and colored how they moved, things that they were doing that they weren't sharing, and I'm thinking things are happening one way, and I'm finding out later that that wasn't the case, and different things are being done under the table. And
Yeah.
so, not probably to the severity of what you're dealing with. And, I think part of that is A, being aware, being aware that, there are going to things outside of the four corners of your project plan that you're going to have to be ready for and figure out, if this happens, how do I deal with it? And the impacts. And I don't just mean the impacts to, the program or project, but there's larger impacts. Could be political impacts, could be impacts to your organization, legal impacts. So being aware of those and being able to, especially if it's happened before, maybe there's a way to um, create some patterns of where you can get ahead of it or solution around it. But sometimes it's about knowing what that risk is. And then not just, can you deliver the program or the project, but what will really happen here if it doesn't go this way? And it's difficult for me when I was in this situation, but again, not as severe as what you described. Um, I had been doing all the things, right? In addition to kind of the judgment, and I had to actually make a similar speech in front of a board for this particular program as well, because of what was taking place. I had to actually clear the record and make sure that fly folks in to make sure that we are all on the same page. But I think it really depends on your organization too, because if your leaders and your leadership, if they don't have your back, if they're not clear, then as a PM, the risk is greater, right? Because now your career's at stake, your reputation's at stake, and so understanding where you are. And also, sometimes you might have to make a call, because if you recognize that the leadership may not have the ears for what you might have to say about the risk, or worse yet, they just don't believe what you're saying and think that it's not a risk, then as a PM, you might have to make a call as to what kind of organization you're working with. Because let's face it, we get blamed at the end of the day.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, a PM could be the perfect scapegoat when things go sideways, right? I mean, yeah, 100% agree with you. And not every single project provides the clarity from the beginning. Definitely, right. There are hidden agendas. Let's say, like the case that I just told you. But there are different hidden agendas. I mean, even stakeholders who don't want the project to be a success from time to time.
Yes,
that may happen. Yeah, that's something. That's a real risk that we need to face. And talking about not project management, but program management. I mean, when you have this portfolio, let's say you want to, build a university, right? So you need to do many things, build classrooms, bring infrastructure, bring internet, bring teachers, whatever. How can you, at a program level or portfolio level, how do you manage all the four pillars with different projects and different project managers working on the same portfolio, which is something that may cause friction as well, because perhaps you may have to work the different PMs working on different projects for the same goal, right?
Right. Well, part of the last thing that you said, working for the same goal. So making sure those outcomes are clear, right? Because, making sure that you're functioning in business impact. I mean, that's something that, in the conversations I've been having recently, whether it's with PMO leaders or articles or even a conference I attended last week, business impact is important. And so the outcome, so as a program level, you know the outcome, right? And the work streams are going to get into the day-to-day and just kind of the, focusing on their work streams. So you need to make sure that the outcomes are clear, and those are what you anchor to or re-anchor to, right? Because a lot of times we have conversations about what we're doing or what we should be doing, but then it's like, well, wait a minute, where does this fall in the line of the outcomes, and do we need to trade things off? So, when I would lead programs, I would actually, tell people, look, hey, if I sense that we are getting off track, or the scope is creeping, different things, I'm going to re-anchor us back to our outcomes, right? Because that will help us to clear the noise, and our priorities. Because if they've shifted, because sometimes when you get into the thick of it, it does shift. right? The priorities have shifted,
Mm-hmm.
the outcome,
Sure.
that shifts, right? And if that's the case, right, what the PM should be doing, or the program manager should be doing, is recognizing, like, so wait a minute, I'm seeing that maybe perhaps the outcomes have shifted here, right? So we're not dealing with just a problem at the project or the work stream level. Your pattern recognition will show you. I give an example and I talk about, a PM who focuses on execution will see two directors not agreeing on scope, technical folks not agreeing on timeline, and the salesperson not agreeing on or wanting to add functionality. They'll see that as three different problems.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're strategic and you're at the program level, you see a governance problem. So that's why I talk about the pattern recognition. When you zoom out and you're clear on what the outcomes are, we're the keepers of that. And so when you re-anchor to that, it kind of helps the conversation and clear the noise to say, what we're doing, if we go this way, that will jeopardize the outcomes that we all agreed that we were doing this for. Or it sounds like perhaps the priority has changed because of X. So which is it? So surfacing those things. And there's actually a process to kind of filtering through all of that to get through it, making sure you have the right people engaged, making sure that you're raising those questions and you're guiding those decisions. That's the other part that we are being tasked to do with in today's world. They want us to help guide
Yes.
strategic decisions,
Yes.
and so that's where that lands, and not just at the program level, even at the project level, right? I have been in initiative after initiative where the program or project teams at our level are dealing with prioritization problems that should have been taken care of at the higher level.
Yes. That kind of things happens all the time. And but um, just out of curiosity, let's say you as program manager, you receive this strategy, and you are the one who needs to communicate that strategy to the teams, PMs, and whatever, right?
Mhm.
But there's another stream of communication that's, let's say, from up. Yeah, I have to cascade all the information. You have to bring all the information to your team to let them know what's the biggest, what's the goal, what's the strategy.
Mhm.
But there is something really interesting, and is how you communicate, how to communicate from the execution to the strategy. I mean, the other way around. So
Mhm.
you have to translate, right, from
Okay.
up the strategy to the team, and how do you translate the execution to strategy to your stakeholders. I mean, this is really this is like magic. I mean, this is like super skill. This is like a superpower that you need to to have,
Mhm.
and that's not easy, right?
No, it's not easy. And I think the part that's not easy is the communication part, because we see it, we kind of know it, but we don't want to say it. And we make a lot of assumptions, right? Because sometimes, like, you're figuring, okay, well, I'm here, I've been assigned, so everything must be fine. Everything must have been agreed upon and taken care of. But something that Daniel said the last time that when you guys were speaking about stakeholder relationships and where they need to be, right? Understanding the currency of your stakeholders so that you can translate it into something that they understand. It goes back to that business impact, being able to translate, a deliverable into business impact. So, for example, um, oftentimes, even on the internal business side, even though, tech company internal business side, one team wants a different capability, right? They're thinking this capability will make our team more efficient, more effective, help us meet the metrics we're going for. So they kick off an initiative, and it includes some downstream teams. So maybe the particular initiative is going to help a education team, or a talent team, but it involves services. It's going to involve support, and then when you get into it, well, introducing that capability will actually increase it will actually create a burden for the downstream teams,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's something that PMs can surface if they're looking at things in totality, and then making sure the executives see that impact. They're not looking at it from the lens of just their teams. They're also looking at the impact, and vice versa. Oftentimes,
Yep.
you can show folks the impact and translate that into how that can help their organization. If you know your stakeholders well enough, you can sometimes show them how they can benefit from something that they hadn't thought of before. You
Oh,
know,
yes.
and so it's really important that you're understanding, how things are going to impact, and not just, even if, everyone has agreed that this is moving forward. I have worked on initiatives where we've gotten all the way into systems enablement and they go, you know what? We don't need to do this. We realize it's going to create too much friction downstream. Well, that question and that answer existed 8 months ago.
Yes.
Nobody asked it. So, it wasn't rocket science. Nobody asked the question. Nobody actually went that deep. And so that's what I mean by being able to raise the risk, bringing people together, have the conversations. You'd be surprised how often that's just not happening. And making sure you're having the conversation, not just a status update. You can do status updates a whole bunch of different ways, but having the conversations that need to be had that make sure that we're tied to business outcomes, and being clear when we're not, and being able to say that,
Hmm.
no matter who it is, and I sometimes think that, um, if there was a perfect rotation for a new PM to take on in terms of different things that they should try to gain the experience, being client facing in professional services is a different level of pressure
Yes.
than on the business side. Because on the business side, you can move things around, you can, but when you're under contract, somebody else's money, you know, executives that are very opinionated and sometimes toddler like in their behavior, you have to function differently. And so, honestly, a lot of times I still take a professional services approach and act like client money is on the line, or I've worked in healthcare where initiatives and systems running put clients or customer patient data could risk lives, right? The fault
100%.
tolerance could be big.
Zero. Hmm.
So,
Or
yeah.
yeah.
So, having that level of urgency when you're looking at things and being able to say the risk and say, I think that we have a different level, we have different priorities here. Let's figure out how we can bring together. So, it's having the conversation, being the person that shines the light on what may need light, and just keeping that 360-degree view. Like, we're supposed to be elevated and looking down so we can see all the different
Yes.
intersections, the street blockages, the traffic jams. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And sometimes we get in our comfort zone of the tasks, of the plan, of asking
Yes.
for the status updates, and that's not where our real value is.
Yeah, definitely. This is something that something that I really like to think about. I mean, we are really, really focused from time to time on the tree, but we need to see the forest. I mean, you said
Yes.
something really important, which is zoom out, see things from certain altitude to really put light on the things that needs light. I mean, definitely
Yeah.
there are certain opportunities on which circumstances that we are really focused on something that doesn't add value to the
Yes.
client, to the project, to the initiative, and the real important things are just hidden. I mean, and yeah, definitely we as project
Mhm.
managers or as program managers or portfolio managers, we have to, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely zoom out and see things from certain altitude to decide what to do next, or to ask the right questions to the right people. That's something
Yeah.
that's really, really, that's a really interesting lesson that we can take from this conversation. But
Absolutely. And sometimes
mhm.
you're it's about asking the question, right? Making it visible, because I always say you can't manage what you can't see.
Oh,
So
definitely.
if somebody is telling me about all their initiatives, I'm like, well, show me. Like, how do you, like, you can't manage what you can't see. And I worked for an organization once that, you know, IT shop, and it was more retail, right? Infrastructure projects, upgrading, bandwidth and things along those lines, but it was a retail company. And they had no, they were stacked upon each other. I was like, well, can you show me where are you keeping track of your project and programs? Well, they weren't. It was just through osmosis. And so I said, well, okay, let's put them all together, look at the timeline. And it looked like a ladder. And anyone who's worked on a portfolio knows If you look at a roadmap, right, and it looks like a ladder, you got a problem. That means all of your same resources doing the same thing at the same time. And that is not a winning strategy for implementation. So to your point, you got to have the conversation. You have to have the zoom out, but you also can't manage what you can't see. And you have to be aware of, AI is in that conversation because AI can now do the work. It can do the automation, the scheduling, the reporting, the risk analysis, the resource balancing. The people make the connection. They have that discernment, that judgment. And I was at a conference last week where talent leaders were talking about that very thing. They were saying that we are trying to hire for that talent, the discernment, the judgment, the strategic leadership, the escalation of trade-offs and the prioritization. That's what they're hiring for. And PMOs are no longer this admin-centric function. They are a strategic function. That's why you have value PMOs, transformation PMOs. So PMs need to realize that the successful PMs of today, not even tomorrow, of today, are not focused just on execution. They're
100%.
positioning themselves as the gap between AI, right? Um, and then also how they can bring that strategic value, because that's the visibility you want, not from checking a box.
100%. Definitely AI right now. I would say that AI has a lot of impact, but definitely uh, we need to wait to understand once the water settles down, who
Mm-hmm.
is going to be still playing the game,
Right.
or who's
It's
going
still
to be,
standing.
yeah, who's going to be, like, how to say it, who's going to be absent because of the water moved and they were
Mhm.
on the wrong stream, right? I mean, yeah,
Yep.
definitely the right stream to be right now is not really focusing on AI. Yeah, really, really understanding AI, but really focusing on something that you said and Daniel said, creating relationships, creating trust, keep on the four pillars: communication, clarity, understanding the strategic view of the project, and understanding the strategy behind the initiatives. That's something really, really interesting. And definitely, I will steal that from you. You can't manage what you can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to take that away. That I'm going to take that from you, and
Of course,
I
you can
will.
have it.
I will quote you. I will quote you every single time. I
Uh,
said that phrase. Yeah, definitely.
it's
Um,
important. People get it when you say that. Then they understand what you're trying to say, and so it kind of cuts through a lot of noise.
Yeah, definitely. We still have like 10 minutes,
Mhm.
so I will share some of the comments from our audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so Daniel, the transition from operational management to strategic leadership is the essential leap for scaling professional impact.
Yep.
Transcending execution to influence vision is the
Yep.
true hallmark of a high level leader. Thank you, Juan and Dori. 100%, Daniel. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, that's something that we need to be aware of, and not only from a PM or project manager, portfolio manager, program manager point of view. This is something that may apply to our lives, our daily lives. What do the
Yes.
things that we do? uh, Perhaps we have this routine. We like to work out, we like to, well, go to work, we go to school, but perhaps asking those questions to ourselves: okay, why I'm doing what I'm doing, this is
Yeah.
good for me, is it good for my family, is it good for society? This is a really, really good question that we need to ask ourselves, I would say, every single day.
Yep.
So, Dory, quick question: have you
Hmm.
faced any stubborn, I mean, someone who doesn't want to change, someone who really wants to stay under comfort zone? How to deal with those guys while they're in your team?
Usually, it's an honest conversation. Honestly, you know, um, I've had to kind of look people in the face and say, what I'm hearing is that you would rather stay here than move forward. And sometimes you just have to actually confront somebody with what you're noticing in their pattern. Now, it depends. Like if you're talking about an initiative where all of a sudden someone's acting funny, something's weird and something's off, that usually is also a conversation, but it's more of a, are you okay? Are things going, how I'm noticing a difference. But if you're noticing that someone is just inflexible, and I do this in the personal life too. I'm like, it sounds like we might be at an impasse. It just seems like you're not willing to move forward, because if you cut to that, then you can at least, you may have to agree to disagree, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if
100%.
you're if I've been on a project where someone is, I have actually had a developer assigned to me and said, refusing to do things. Well, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And telling me it's my responsibility to tell his leader that he's not going to do that. And I'm like, I think we have a fundamental misunderstanding of each other's roles.
Mm-hmm.
I hear what you're saying, but you were assigned to this program, and one of two things: you need to go to your leader. If you're unable to perform your duties that you're getting paid for, that's a conversation between you and your leader. But I've also had to confront a developer who was throwing a monkey wrench by not
Mm-hmm.
actually doing what he was supposed to do, and I had to call him out on it. I said, we're not going to revisit this conversation because we keep coming back to this as a way for you not to take accountability. So sometimes being very direct is a way of cutting to the chase, but a lot of people don't want to do that because people distract and they project. But again, when you have clarity in the outcomes, you sometimes can repeat yourself, and then not give people the wiggle room, close that gap between what they're trying to do. But that also takes a little bit of practice, and so that you're not stuck trying to be somebody's psychiatrist or therapist in the process.
Yeah, you mentioned something. I had to be even a fortune teller from time to time, from project.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to read minds. I mean, trying
Yes.
to understand what's going on with this guy. Okay, okay, because people change, right? People
Mhm.
get divorced, get in love, get,
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
They seem to have a lot of things going on. And for instance, the conversation that we had with Daniel a couple of weeks ago, uh, he told me that during certain project he had this developer, his certain team member, whose dog died, and that
Mhm.
had a huge impact on
Yeah.
her performance, his or her
Yeah.
performance, and that impacted the project because she or he was some sort of tech lead or something. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you need to read minds. I mean, yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. From time to time, you have to,
Yeah.
be like aware of some things happen. It's not a hidden agenda. We're humans. Things
Yeah.
happen, but definitely, this is for all the audience, for all the PMs that are watching this. You will face people that don't want to work with you, don't want
Yes.
to work with certain project. They're working only for, I don't know, the paycheck,
Yeah.
perhaps
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something that I like to tell people in the most respectful way is either you move or you get moved by
Yes.
the situation, technology, attitude, new generations coming, people
Yes.
earning less money than you, people who will work the double for half your salary in different regions,
Hmm.
and that's something that it's really, really difficult. But yeah, let's face
Well,
it, we will.
we projects are run by people,
Hmm.
and the other thing I think that has made me successful is where I was raised to deal with the person in front of me, right? And we forget that, and when you do that, people notice. They can tell when you're being authentic, and when you notice that somebody is off or acting different, and instead of just saying, "Where's your update? You're late," instead of saying, "Hey, are you okay? How are things going?" That's always within our control. That is always within our control, is how we
Hmm.
respond to other people, right? And so that's actually one of the biggest pieces of currency that PMs have, is to be able to manage their relationship with people and never forget that.
Yeah, that's a fact. Today is kind of hard. It's harder because we're dealing with team from India,
Yeah.
Ukraine,
Yeah.
Argentina, different places, and yeah, I mean, when you're working in a face-to-face environment, it's kind of manageable. But
Yeah.
can you tell us, just last question? I think we have
Hmm.
5 minutes. How do you deal with these four pillars with people who are on a remote work environment, people who you can't see them face to face, or even people who doesn't turn their camera on? How can you work with these teams?
You can still stay connected. I think that if you have remote, it's being intentional, thinking about it ahead of time, right? So you can actually like encourage people to turn their camera on for the first few minutes and maybe not have your slide deck up or your spreadsheet up. Let people see you smile and let them see you engage. And then back off, provide asynchronous ways to catch up. Sometimes I will give time back, right, to make sure I'm mindful and not just running through status updates. Let's talk about the deltas. Let's talk about the differences so that they know that the meetings that they show up to will be worth their time and not a
Hmm.
waste of time. But also other ways to engage. You have to make sure that you're educating yourself, not only about global teams, but there's also things like, neurodivergence, people who may have challenges with cameras on or aren't comfortable with your typical icebreakers, or you might have language barriers. Part of that is inclusive. There's conclusive communication. There's ways of engaging remote teams. But intentionality is the thing, right? Not a second thought, not an afterthought. So you can build your meetings. You can build intentionality into your meetings to deal with remote teams. You can rotate your meeting times. You can find even ways to include them in initiatives that are hybrid if you've got people in person and people that are also remote. But it's the intentionality that matters, and not just assuming that, I there's a lot of companies that are based in North America but are global. Well,
Hmm.
make sure you're acting as if you're global, and challenge that. There's practices you can put into place, watch parties, all sorts of things you can do. But if you don't think about it until an afterthought, then you've already missed it.
Yeah,
You need to be
hundred
intentional about
percent.
thinking. And you can always ask. You can always
Yeah,
ask people what they need.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Thank you very much, Zori, for your time. Um, any final words for our audiences? I know you have this very, very interesting model that you perhaps want to talk about and to share with the audiences. So, with
Yeah.
our audience, go ahead.
Absolutely. If some of the things are resonating that you heard today, and if you're challenged with a shift, you're not sure what's happening. I do free master classes about once every 6 weeks. The next one is coming up June 23rd, where I help you to see that shift more specifically. How do you see it? How do you recognize it? And then we can talk about what you need to do to make the shift. But just be aware that that you're not broken. You're not lacking anything as a PM if you're feeling this shift. It's just the expectation has changed quietly. And you need to understand what it is you need to do differently so you can be seen differently and get those promotions and get that strategic leadership visibility that you need. So it's not necessarily in more certifications or, anything like that. It's more about understanding what's happening and applying it to your real work, not just like a
Yep.
methodology or theory. Like, how do I move through this in my work today? And so I'm happy to help with that. If they're interested in the masterclass, you can see how to register for that on my page. But also, be curious, stay curious, because that
Yeah.
is what will lead you to many opportunities and things that you can never imagine that are going to be wonderful. So thank you, Juan, for the time. I
No.
appreciate it, and the
Thanks to you.
audience that is here. And I hope that the insights resonate.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Saying hello to Adriana, Cristina. ¿Cómo estás, Adriana? Qué bueno tenerte aquí. Nice having you here. Gran abrazo. Big hug to you, Adriana. So, Dori, thank you very much. Let's keep in
Yes.
touch. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Juan. Everyone have a
Okay.
wonderful day and wonderful weekend.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.
Okay. Ah,